to the first press conference of this official section. And welcome once again. She's saying it in Spanish now. It's a pleasure to introduce and present this press conference. It corresponds to the film that will be in the opening night of the official section of the 63rd San Sebastian International Film Festival. It's a co-production, which is Spanish and Canadian, which is called Regression, written and directed by Alejandro Amenábar, who will be with us. And along with them, we've got Fernando Boveira and Axel Chubatsky and Paulo Vasile, who is the CEO of Mediaset Spain. And they're all prepared to answer your questions. Let's start with the first question, please. John Hopewell, con un micrófono que creo que funciona.
Alejandro Amenábar. The film is set in the northern part of the United States in the 1990s. What relevance would the film have, or does the film have, for Spain or beyond Spain, the world, in the 2010s? If any, you can say none at all.
Well, actually, considering I was born in Chile, I don't know, I just look for good stories. En español o en inglés.
Como quieras, hay traducción.
I always look for good stories, and in this case, the story here took me to North America, but perhaps I can find a story in China and Russia, and I would go there as well to shoot it. But the truth is, from the films, very few reflect Spanish reality. Perhaps the closest was the film Mar Adentro, The Sea Inside. Alejandro, I would like to know why you've cancelled the premiere of the 28th of August in the United States. Well, I think they've wanted to make the film to be presented first or initially in Europe and to see what happens after that. The film is premiered in Europe, in Germany, simultaneously with Spain. It will be premiered in the UK on the 16th, in France on the 23rd, and in the rest of Europe in November. In China, Korea, US will be later on. Okay. Good afternoon. A question from Mr. Amenábar. The first question, it's quite clear it's a psychological film more than a horror film. And the truth is, all of your films are more or less horror films. Have you thought about any sort of specific genre, for example, doing a comedy? And secondly, do you have any project in Spain at hand, or in the Basque Country with Basque actors or a Basque cast? No, I know a Basque director, however, Oscar Santos, who is now doing the second part of Zipi Zape. And well, as you know, my surname comes from here. My father, who is from Chile, came to Azpeitia looking for his roots. He didn't find his roots, but obviously my surname stems from here in the Basque Country. You were talking about comedy, making a comedy. Well, I don't know. This summer, I did an advertisement. I shot an advertisement completely different to what I've done so far, and I thought it was quite attractive. It was especially attractive for me. But when I'm writing, I naturally derive towards drama, but I could undertake a comedy in any type of genre, and why not a musical comedy? Next question, please. Yes, I would like to ask a question to Mr. Amenábar, and another one to Vasile, or two to Mr. Amenábar, if you'll allow me. Do you think you've created a new type of horror film or terror, where at the end horror doesn't exist in the film itself? And it seemed to me, tell me whether it's yes or no, whether Emma Watson has a problem of shooting sexual explicit scenes, because there's a scene at the beginning that she was going to shoot was going to be much more realistic, and it goes over very quickly. Vasile, Telecinco is a type of a very popular TV channel, but it seems in cinema, even commercially, you do very good quality films. Why that change from a popular type of TV, if you'll allow me to say so, very run-of-the-mill sort of film, with popular cinema, but with a higher quality? Why the change in register? Well, I remember when I met Ethan Hawke for the first time. He says, I've just come from 2 horror films, and what I'm interested in this film or project, what I don't like in horror films is they make people afraid. And I think this project is more deactivates fear and takes fear away from people. I'm not too sure whether it's a new genre, but it's a perspective that I felt, that's the reason why I was interested in this type of story upon satanic issues, and I thought something could be terrible or horrible or horrifying from the outset. The scene that you're referring to, the limits are set amongst us all, and what's going to be seen, what's not going to be seen, the audience. There are different categories of audiences depending on what you see on the screen. A film like this, the more you show is going to be worse, and we've found that sometimes we've tried it with digital effects and so on. We've had to eliminate things or edit things out to maintain the tone of the film. It's not necessarily Emma Watson's intervention, but obviously when there's a scene that has to do with sex scenes, everything is agreed upon amongst all of us. As regards to the questions that you've made, I would like to say Mediaset Spain, what it has as a virtue is to do things and to do good projects and do them well at the best we can. We do a generalist type TV and we try to do it well, and to do it well is to make it as to the biggest audience as possible, which some people don't like, but it's a popular type TV channel. We want to make a TV shows which are popular without losing control, because a television, an elite type TV television channel in Italy is different. But we do it with the best people possible, and in cinema as well. We want to do good projects, and we do it with the best people to make good quality and great quality projects. Quality is something relative. It depends. To measure a street in liters is impossible to do. It wouldn't be correct. So therefore, when we make films, we try to find the best projects, and when we do TV, we also do the same. I want to take advantage of this moment and to say once again, with this film, Alejandro is demonstrating that we can make excellent and very good quality films from Spain towards the world, and that's the mission of cinema and films, not a small thing which is destined to the most immediate adjacent countries. This has to be done as well. But this is cinema, not with a little c, but with a capital, with capital letters, and sometimes going to other places, such as, for example, the film is not set in Spain, but as it has to have, cinema, its aspiration is universal. That's what cinema. TV is something else. Thank you. Okay, I've got 2 questions for Alejandro, if you'll allow me. The first is, I would like to ask you, ask you that the film has different parts. The first part, which is a very police type of film, detective type film, and then it's a genre film. That's where I enjoy more. From the audience standpoint, you feel very comfortable, like in many of your other films, like Thesis. When are you going to make a film which is not so psychological or so family horror-oriented, and you enjoy yourself enjoying a horror-type film where we horror freaks have a great time watching them? And another question, I studied in the same university of you, for better or for worse, at the Complutense of Madrid. It's 10th anniversary of your opera prima, your Thesis. Are you going to make any commemoration of this? Because we expect that everyone's looking forward to seeing it. That would be very interesting, yeah. Well, for me, to make films is many things. It's a way of enjoying myself, of evading things and expressing myself. It's something that I would like to see as the audience. I love mystery films and horror films. I think some of them are very poor, but some of them very good, I'm sure, because they do exist. But humbly, I've tried to contribute a little grain of sand, basically, with this film, a film which is contained in itself. It's dry, austere. picked up elements of 1970 thrillers in the US thriller films, and it goes against some of the other horror films that are addressed nowadays or filmed nowadays. It's a horror film, but it ends up being a psycho thriller, and it ends up being a dramatic film. So therefore, that's what makes it so. That means going crazy for me, at least, and to do a film that I would like to shoot, a film that I would like to do, and it's a different story whether it connects with you or the audiences at the end of the day. Hi Alejandro, congratulations for your film, for this opening night inauguration here in San Sebastian. I would like to talk about the cast. Ethan Hawke, before you said something about him, and especially for Emma Watson. I think in your career, in your films, amongst all of the virtues, perhaps, that we all know, that we've seen in your films, one of the great things that you do very well is, from my point of view, is how you choose the cast, Javier Bardem, Noriega, Richard Weisz, for example, for the stories that you have in mind to tell. And in this case, with Emma Watson, this role, which is such an important role in the film, important, but she's not seen on so much on the screen. Was that clear from the outset, and because of her age, we haven't seen her very much, but nevertheless, I would like to know your opinion of Ethan Hawke, but especially about Emma Watson. Well, sometimes the casting process is madness, but sometimes it doesn't matter who you call, but who feels the call. We were crazy enough to propose to submit this film to Emma Watson because, as I said, who wouldn't want to work with Emma Watson nowadays? She's very intelligent, she's brilliant, she's committed, she's beautiful, and we were sufficiently crazy to throw the stone and show her the script and see what happened, and she responded very positively. Because we had the no beforehand, but it turned out that she was interested in this change of register and this story and change in genre. So therefore, in that sense, it was very easy. With Ethan Hawke, a little of the same. He's an actor that I wanted to work with for quite a few years now, and I admired his work because of his trilogy, Before Dawn, for example. So therefore, he's an American guy, but he's got he's very European. He knows the world he lives in. The person who wanted to be here today was Ethan. I remember when we were making the film, he said, why don't we try to take this film to San Sebastian? I'd love to go to San Sebastian. I'm told that the cooking and the food is fantastic. And due to ironies of destiny or fate, he wasn't able to be here. I needed an ally to know exactly what we wanted to tell in the story and to belong to both worlds. And Ethan was perfect for this. Congratulations, Alejandro. The question is, where does the film stem from? What it's based upon? If the truth is there any reports have been filed against those satanic rites where it's based upon real events, or where does it all come from? Well, it comes from many, many years that the journalists remember. It's 6 years since my last project or film. I wanted to make a horror film, and I was thinking about possible narrative excuses or what Hitchcock called the MacGuffins. He said, well, vampires, satanic, Satan, and so on. I thought this was a very good start off. I read a couple of Satan Bibles, satanic Bibles, but I left it to one side. I thought it was a bit complicated, and I couldn't see the way of, because so many films have been made upon the devil, and I couldn't give it a new approach or a special approach. And then I encountered the satanic sexual ritual abuse, for example. This phenomenon was very strong and quite extended in the United States in the 1980s, and I saw that this would enable me to continue to make my project on Satanism, and then to explore at the same time the world of people's minds and the ins and outs of the mind, and to carry out and make a psycho thriller. Like I say, it was a horror story, but it ended up being a psycho thriller which is quite deeply rooted in reality. The film is not based upon, it's inspired upon the entire phenomenon of satanic issues, and we wondered at what was happening in very many towns in the United States at that period of time. Hi. I would like to ask you, Alejandro, there's a moment at the end of the film when Ethan Hawke is talking to his father, and they're both on one side, and a cross appears, and then you see the other point of view, and there's a basketball net in the middle or backboard there. Why does that happen? Well, the idea was to suggest or to finish the film in a chapel. I thought this was something that made sense from the point of view of the film, and to show the jail like a monastery, but we didn't. But chapels or a church had been seen in the film already, and we didn't want to reproduce the same area or the same shooter in the same place. So visiting jails, one of the things that you realize that there are multifunctional spaces, and we wondered, let's turn a basketball court. It's a typical space that could have been used for a theater or for a play or for projecting a film or to play basketball. That's all. That's the only reason. Hi, good afternoon. I'm going to leave the issue of the film to one side and ask you a question that has emerged because we were waiting for you to arrive, and they were showing Braveheart, the soundtrack of Braveheart. I know that you like music in cinema. One of your favorite composers is James Horner, and I would like you to tell us or to give us your opinion what the world of cinema has lost with the disappearance of Horner, and whether on any occasion you've addressed the possibility of having worked with him. Well, the truth is, I admire John Williams more. He has been the composer that got me in contact with music in cinema, but James Horner was one of the great composers, has been for many years in cinema, and we've lost a great composer, and I imagine that the Avatar's trilogy, for example, I'm quite curious to know how they're going to resolve this, because the music was quite characteristic that Horner had composed for the film. Would you have liked to have worked with him at all? The truth is, I made the music of almost all of my films, and in the case of Agora, we wanted a composer, a European composer, who would have that mixture of a Hollywood sensitivity and also European. But in the case of Regression, we thought Baños was perfect, as he's made a lot of thrillers, and I like him very much, and I appreciate his work. I like his work, and he did something that was great. Allow me to witness how he did the work. It's something horrible to compose and to have a little Jiminy Cricket look at him and say, literally sit behind me with your mobile phone, your computer, while I compose things, and I'll show you things. And that was marvelous because I was able to see how he did his work. Hi, good afternoon. Julian Montesano from Argentina. I would like to ask Alejandro Amenábar. The influences were very powerful and very Hitchcock-like in the film. And I relate this also, and you will tell me whether this is the case or not, with the title of the film. There is a regression. You refer to the 1970s cinema and a classic story of psycho horror like Alfred Hitchcock used to do. Well, Alfred Hitchcock is all over the place, isn't he? He's everywhere. In the history of cinema, we always look at Hitchcock, and Hitchcock was the first director that, since I was a teenager, I saw his films, and I didn't study to be a director, but I saw how he took his shots and how he made the cuts and edited his films. He was a great influence for me. Hitchcock has also made films upon psychology, and so everything that has to do with the regressions, to enter into the minds of people. We tried to do things that were very classic. We wanted to avoid digital effects because digital effects sort of rejected everything. And the reference basically has been what you said. Let's say the films of the 1970s. I'm talking about Pakula, Sidney Lumet, all the President's Men's, etc. These were dry, sort of like thrillers, very austere films, but they gave us that air of realism that we wanted to seek with this film. It makes sense because in some of those thrillers that treated the figure of the devil like The Exorcist or The Seed of the Devil contributed to create the culture upon the devil in the U.S. And Bebé Romari, yes. Yes. Thank you. Alejandro, good afternoon. Going back to the double background that I think the film has, manipulation of minds, of people, do you believe that the devil would be able, is that sinuous? What face do you put on the devil nowadays? What do you think you would do? I can't put a face on the devil, but evil exists, and it infiltrates into things, seeps into things. And this is a story about error, evil, and the devil. And the error, we can make mistakes, and it permeates everything, really. It seeps into everything. And that's where the problem lies. That is, how do you find that evil focus when you're opening the wrong doors, the doors that you shouldn't open? Alejandro, hi. I represent a Chilean journal. What have you done? What do you feel now? I feel that it represents the national Chilean. Today is the National Day in Chile. Is there any special emotion for you being Chilean? I feel emotional because all of my family in Chile, I've linked more of them to them. And my father was Chilean and my mother was Spanish, but I've always been close to them, but I was brought up in Spain, and I feel Spanish. But this happened to me a few years back when I went to visit relatives with my parents, and I don't believe too much upon your blood and your motherland, but I did feel something quite special, and I felt half Chilean, albeit it's so far away from Spain. Are you thinking at any time to make a film in Chile? Why not? But I think what I should do is to travel more and go to see my relatives a bit more, my family in Chile. Hi, a question for Alejandro. I would like to know how to direct Emma Watson. When you directed Emma Watson, where you asked her to give her 100% when she cries and she becomes very dramatic in those scenes, or you wanted to convey something else in those scenes. No, her portrayal and also Ethan's was very intuitive and quite basic. So therefore she moved with two patterns. For example, one is she has to believe what I'm telling her, and the other is it's a character that is escaping from a past that she doesn't want to confront. And these are the two issues that she had to address, and that she had to go 100% there. When I always see an actor or an actress to ask for one take and another take and another take, this is an enormous amount of stress for me. But you see that she's crying, doing everything, but I say, do I ask her to take another take? Do I do another take, and then they clean her face and they cry again? I say, how do you do it to cry time and time and time again? She said, well, I concentrate in things and memories like many actors do, but if I don't manage it, if I can't cry, I end up crying because of the frustration of not being able to cry. Next question, please. No further questions?
John Hopewell, Variety again. I'd like to ask a question to the producers, not to Alejandro. Would it be so easy to finance Regression now as when you did, given the state of financing of the Spanish cinema, or is that state so uncertain that you can't really give an answer?
Bueno, el caso de Regresión no es un caso.
In the case of Regression, it's not a run-of-the-mill situation within the Spanish industry, because it's a film that's financed with Spanish money, Canadian money, and also with international contributions. But part of it comes from pre-sold territories that have afforded their financing. For example, like in the previous film, we've had the collaboration of Mediaset, which is a great support, and the first time with Telefonica Studios. At this present moment, we're going through a process of transition to a new aid incentives situation, which has brought about a lot of uncertainty to plan a Spanish production nowadays. I hope that with the capacity that Lorena, the general director of LEAKA, for example, will have many more systems that will allow us to finance things better in 2 or 3 months' time. But at the present moment, we don't know where we're at. We're in no man's land, really. There are transition clauses with the current model that we have in force, but we don't know where the new model's going. That is to do with the grants we're provided. But as regards financing and distribution, I think we are in the best situation that we can, better situation than 2 years ago, because the things were much more complicated then. the market is responding, and that's very important. We're seeing that there are Spanish films that consistently are amongst the 10 top in the box office, so therefore 10 top films in the box office. I would like Spanish TV to have further drive to be able to complement and that commercial cinema with much more author-type films, and that would be what I'm looking for. I don't think this is the place in the film festival and the presentation of a film with a great Spanish artist to use this space to give you an industrial or controversial or political discourse. I would only like to say, as a company who is participating in cinema, that quite often we have to try, and we don't achieve it most of the times, to reduce our investment in a film, and in this case we would have loved to have financed it entirely. Unfortunately, due to a law which reflects a mentality or a mindset, a very small, a very closed and strict mindset. As you know, the fact that the film is made in English and not in Galician, for example, means it doesn't have access to a certain type of possible investment. And this is something that I, quite frankly, I believe will be overcome, I believe, because it is true that there does exist, just like the devil, there's a great fear, and the error also exists, and stupidity exists. And we know that, for example, at the end of the day, stupidity will lose at the end of the day, and I'm sure that over time, Spanish cinema will be freed from these links that ties it. And just like in this case, we have had to reduce our enthusiasm that we could have expressed with a higher participation, because we're under a situation that, apart from of whatever the law says, which is very frustrating for the cinema that we were talking about in the past. Alejandro's cinema, great cinema that stems from one place but is universal for the rest of the world. El Señor Cuchabasque. Well, in our case, in Telefónica Studios, we have 5 films here in this festival. This is the most films that we've had in any festival, and they're all co-productions. And this explains a reality, not only a reality in Spain, but a reality of other markets. The films sometimes can't exist in markets that are not completely self-sufficient. And this is a reality of film at an international level, or an international production, and Regression is an international production, has these characteristics. And Fernando explained it very well. It's a strange situation, and its financing can't be. I wish we could pre-sell all cinema, not only Spanish but American cinema. But a film of these characteristics, which is a unique animal, really, it's a rara avis. Well, we hope that such is not the case, and it won't be something strange. Alejandro, I would like to ask you, now, someone with your career, what would you say to young directors that we can still dream, or we could? What advice would you give to those of us that are starting now? If you went back before you did the film Thesis, and you would have thought to yourself, I would never be sitting here. I don't know whether I would say it from there or here. I'm not too sure what I think. What I would say is, since I started and I had the great opportunity and luck of dedicating myself to what I like, all the people that want to do this, I would say that albeit the curriculum and the studies aren't very good, but you've got some very good friends, and there will be colleagues in your profession. But go to the university. It's important to have quite clear what you want in your mind, and in my case, it was quite clear in my mind that what I liked is everything that had to do with telling stories. That's quite clear. Have it clear in your mind as soon as possible, because otherwise you lose the plot. Sometimes you don't know what you want, and that the work, and undoubtedly the quite good fortune, luck always comes into it, to be able to work and to make short films, and that's the best way to learn. And nowadays, with the means you have available, for how difficult it was for me to get a camera in the past, nowadays it's much more accessible and with a much higher quality. Last question, please. Alejandro, question for you. Manuel Amed from the Austrian agency. 6 years without a film of yours. The question is, on the one hand, are you really happy with your film that you've come back with, and why have you taken so long to make this film? Well, when you journalists ask me why I take so long, well, it's perhaps I'm not as creative that I thought I was. Well, the truth is I work non-stop, basically. It's important to find a story, no matter how long it takes. Stories come in front of me, I read them, you're tempted, and they'll say, no, no, no. And I notice when I say, well, this is the story, this is what I wanted to tell, story I wanted to tell, and that has meaning for me. For me, this story summarized everything I wanted to do. Like I said before, I wanted to make a film, a suspense film, and obviously dealing with satanic issues. And amongst all of this, I've discovered many things about people's minds and how fragile they are and how perverse they can be, our memory can be, and how perverse our memory can be. And I found it a what? For example, this gives me strength, because over time, when I was at the university, for example, I was very mercenary. This is to make a living. To make films is not only to make a living, but it's also another way of expressing myself. Okay. End of the press conference. Thank you very much to our invited guests. Thank you very much to all of you.